Naruto's impact in the manga world was tremendous, but its worldwide success can largely be attributed to its anime adaptation. Among the struggles of adapting material from page to picture is the addition of sound. While appropriate dialogue and sound effects are necessary, the most important element in accentuating the emotion of a given scene is the music, or lack thereof, that accompanies it. A poorly integrated soundtrack can weaken the impact of a good story in several ways. It can be too intrusive, thus distracting from the story rather than complementing it. The reverse effect is that the soundtrack doesn't leave enough of an impact. If you can remove the music from a scene and lose nothing, you've probably done something wrong. The original Naruto anime reaches an intriguing middle ground, where despite how grandiose the music can be, it doesn't overpower or clash with the scene it's attached to. The combination of traditional Eastern instruments, vocal chants, modern guitars, and other sounds creates a distinct, memorable atmosphere that grips me in the same way that a Taku Iwasaki score would. The bouncier Afternoon of Konoha in particular definitely reminds me of his more hip-hop centric work. The overall weight of the music often lends the scene it accompanies more magnitude than you would otherwise feel from the story itself. It's enough to turn a scene of characters standing around talking into a dramatic spectacle. Cliffhangers are emphasized to the maximum, and before you know it, you've binged like 80 episodes in a week. Surely that wasn't just me, right? Naruto's pacing is bogged down by reaction shots and a heavy reliance on dialogue. This isn't generally an issue with manga, because you can breeze through it based on your own reading speed. With anime, however, those paragraphs have to be spoken with the proper emphasis and tone that said dialogue would require. The result is a sequence of panels that I could read in maybe a minute or two, being extended up to an extra 4 or 5 minutes. This can become annoying or boring over time if the production team doesn't effectively disguise this dry dialogue. But the Naruto anime makes up for it, by backing each scene with a kick-ass cacophony. In episode 67, it takes Sasuke roughly 2 minutes and 15 seconds to charge his Chidori, rush Gaara, and strike him. There are multiple cutaways to characters talking and reacting, and half the time Sasuke's background is just a bunch of speed lines. In the manga, where these panels can be laid out side by side on a single page, these cutaways seem like they're happening in conjunction with the attack. But because the anime needs to actually speak those words, the sequence just feels bloated. Oh boy, Sasuke's Chidori sure looks deadly. I can't wait to see him actually use it. So how do you compensate for this? How do you sell the scale of this attack through the pacing issues? By adding in some electric guitar riffs, intense percussion, and just a touch of techno synths for that slight air of danger and mystery. Does it fix the scene? No, but it certainly helps. The way that the opening effect mimics the sound of chirping birds, for which this attack is named, is also really cool. Of course, Naruto isn't always about loud action, and if that's all composer Toshio Masuda was good at, he'd be missing half of the story. His style also lends itself well to the quiet, somber melodies that a high-stakes show like this would require in its worst moments. Loneliness, Swinging Necklace, and countless other tracks subdue those once aggressive strings and thunderous wind instruments in favor of an arrangement designed to bring out the tears. This effect is made all the stronger by the generally intense or upbeat tone of the rest of the OST. And do I even need to mention sadness and sorrow? The way all of the instruments play into one another is breathtaking, but what really caps it off is the piano solo at the end. This track is what I'd imagine the 5 stages of grief would sound like. A good soundtrack can effectively enhance the tone of any given scene, but a great soundtrack can also connect to the characters and represent them through music. Theme songs play a crucial role in demonstrating what that character thinks, how they operate, and how you should feel about them. Orochimaru's debut changed everything. He devastated the Leaf Village by killing the 3rd Hokage. He latched onto and brought forth Sasuke's hatred, sending his character, as well as the tone of the entire series, into a slow, downward spiral. He kickstarted the chain of escalation that would eventually propel Naruto into a manga juggernaut. Orochimaru was a powerful force not only within the context of the narrative, but outside of it as well. As such, his theme needed bombast and menace, but it also needed an extra something to separate it from what came before. That's where the organ comes in. Naruto's soundtrack is already hella bombastic, but the standouts like heavy violence and Need to Be Strong emphasize booming vocals and intense guitar riffs. Other intense tracks will lean more towards the flute or shakuhachi. Keyboard blasts. Or the shamisen. You know, this thing. As far as I'm aware, Orochimaru's theme is the only piece that even uses the organ. But even if it does pop up elsewhere and I just missed it, no other song in the original series features it as prominently. Here, the organ is the primary focus, and since it's rarely used elsewhere in the soundtrack, this theme, and by extension this character, feels all the more unique. It adds to Orochimaru's overall presence and sinisterness, which is important since Team 7 had never faced someone of this caliber before. His Shippuden theme removes the organ in favor of an array of other unsettling instruments. The power in this piece comes from the deep, ominous vocals, which is fine in a standalone track. Unfortunately, this is one of the most common elements across the Shippuden soundtrack, so Orochimaru's theme doesn't stand out as much. Given his place in the story at that point, though, I suppose that's fitting. Even so, the organ was an effective tool in establishing the impact his character would have on the series going forward, and I was sad to see it disappear. This isn't to suggest that Shippuden has a bad soundtrack, though. I might prefer the original, but that doesn't blind me to the conceptual gems that exist in Shippuden. For example, have a listen to Sasuke's Shippuden theme. Dominated by lonely guitar strings, this piece carries a distinct Wild West vibe, a feeling of roaming aimlessly in a deserted foreign land as you lose yourself in thought. The world is yours for the taking, but your ever-expanding surroundings only make you feel smaller, your insignificance made all the stronger by the bonds you severed, the friends you left behind. You sought power, and you attained it. Your ultimate goal has been fulfilled. But was it worth the sacrifice? The hardship? The ambience does little to intrude upon these solitary strings, but it briefly bursts to the forefront every now and then, symbolizing the moments when Sasuke's memories of the Hidden Leaf flood back into his mind. The brief appearance and disappearance of those memories only increase the depressing isolation. But in the end, the lone guitar must soldier on through the everlasting void. Wandering is packed with thematic depth, but Sasuke's original theme does a magnificent job at cluing you into who Sasuke is and how he's perceived. The monotonous guitar strings carry an air of ominous mystery, hinting at Sasuke's dark past and the suffering he had endured as a child. Unlike Wandering, however, the guitar isn't alone here. This piece is dominated by other instruments, which is itself a parallel to Sasuke's role in the story at this point. He is largely influenced by Naruto, Sakura, and Kakashi, and our perception of him is initially shaped by how the other characters describe him. Every girl in his class swoons over him, and that cool aloofness is punctuated by the percussion. The additional bass rumblings play up his physical strength, while the harmonious flute illustrates his intelligence and tactical skills. Sasuke is the most talented ninja among his peers, and this theme song reflects the blind but intense admiration that comes with his status. Its more subdued, reserved tone also serves as a stark contrast to Naruto's bombastic, upbeat theme. Even if I ignore all of that, this song just sounds cool. I could play it on a loop for hours and never get tired of it. Wandering is one-dimensional, so I get bored of it fast. And no, the irony of that last statement isn't lost on me. My aesthetic appreciation for this track is just as shallow as my first impression of Sasuke. My stance on these two tracks is drowning in personal bias, but music that I like will ultimately be outranked by music that I love, regardless of any symbolic meaning or lack thereof. In this case, I get the symbolism and the kick-ass instrumental. What's not to love? I could probably spend hours picking apart each individual track if I had the time or patience to do so. Like how the first 6 seconds of Shikamaru's theme serve as an oral double take, before diving full force into action. It captures how unmotivated he is, before swiftly shifting into an intense flute melody that carries with it a feeling of being 3 steps ahead of the game. Or, in Shikamaru's case, of being 100 steps ahead of the game. And at the end, it just sort of fizzles out, like the music itself is giving up on playing more than it needs to. Or how about Jiraiya's goofy theme? It's the perfect piece to accompany the pervy sage and his skeevy shenanigans. But don't get too comfortable. This man has a far more impressive reputation than that of a middle-aged deviant. Just go check out the soundtrack. My words here can hardly do it justice. And while you're at it, why not check out my other Naruto videos or the podcast I make about it. A special thank you to King Kevin 30, Stone Cold 0007, India Charbonneau, Double One, and all of my other patrons for supporting projects like this. And until next time, keep on YouTubing.